He's one of the great Big Ten running backs of all time, at a first-time or a first-round draft pick from the Kansas City Chiefs. Larry Johnson joining us this morning here on the show. LJ, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing really good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, buddy. Thanks so much for joining us. Good to catch up with you once again. We've had some conversations in the past, and I know that you know that Chiefs organization very closely from your time there, and they're skidding a little bit. They've lost a couple in a row. Their defense has been a problem. Do you ultimately think that defense is going to undermine a playoff run for them?
I don't think it undermines it, but I do think when they thought Eric Berry was going to come back, it was going to be the savior of all, and they haven't yet been able to play together with him back. Now, things could change. Next over a couple of weeks or whatever in the playoff run, they could gel. They could get back together. Eric Berry is an outstanding defensive leader. Everybody knows this. So him being at the helm of that defense, now everybody can start relying on each other and going into these games and knowing how to actually defeat offenses when it comes to the playoffs. Everybody knows Kansas City has always had trouble when it gets to the playoffs. A lot of that, and now in this new NFL, is that the offense scores so fast that you are forcing your defense to be in a track meet they never signed up for. So you asking the defense to come right back on the field after 3 plays and to defend against 9 routes, slant routes, crossing routes. This is a passing league. You have to be able to have a balanced offense to let your defense rest so they can be healthy, they can be fresh when they go against these tougher offenses.
Let me ask you, you were such a workhorse for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then when you went to the playoffs, you guys had to rely on the run, and the Indianapolis Colts kind of swarmed that, tried to take you out of it. And really, the Chiefs' offense couldn't do anything around it. Was it in your mind when you guys went into that game that the Chiefs' playoff woes were so obvious that advancing in the playoffs was such a historical problem that it filtered into your confidence going into the game as a team?
It a lot had to do with it. Obviously, we come from our theories or our ideology was we were very, very old school. So you're coming from the old school Dick Vermeil, Marty Schottenheimer, when we did two-a-days, where we did padded two-a-days, where we went through all those hard, tough practices. It was a long season for us. And even when we had bye week, we really didn't have a bye week. We practiced in pads during that whole bye week. It was times that Tony Gonzalez didn't practice or Jason Dunn didn't practice, and we had to practice with practice players because guys were beat up at the end of the season. So you go into a playoff game, our minds were so already burned out, our bodies were burned out, and we were really trying to fight to stay in games, even when we had great teams. So I think it's a lot to do than just the X's and O's of the game. A lot has to do with the mental, emotional advantages of going into playoffs. Now, I don't know the philosophy of how the NFL is run now. It's guys with pads that don't have pads. But when I played, we got to these games and we were tired, we were beaten, and we were playing against very, very tough. We came and played Indianapolis Colts. For one playoff, I wasn't dressed, and the other playoff that I played in, we went against the Colts. We went against Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. So those games we came in, I was coming off a 400-carry season. We were done. It was like we couldn't muster any drive to get things going.
Larry Johnson joins us this morning here on the show. When you watch Patrick Mahomes play, I'm sure you're like everybody, incredibly impressed. But is that going to be enough for the Chiefs in the playoffs? I mean, do you think that Mahomes can carry this team to multiple playoff wins because of how good he has been?
I think he's a veteran when it came to the regular season. Now he is a rookie going into the playoff picture. The playoff picture is completely different than what the season is. I know he has the talent. Everybody knows he has the talent. I think he's going to move forward and progress as a player, but this is where he's really going to be tested because he's never been in this atmosphere before. He's never been in these situations before. There is no next week after these situations. And I think he will rise to the challenge and really go out and really surprise people because now everybody knows what he's capable of, but yet you have seen time and time again you're not able to stop this kid. So I think him going into a playoff picture with somebody with a defense or a defensive coordinator who has really been there time and time again, you may see him struggle. But I think overall you'll see the team pull together and really rally behind him and really pull this one out.
Do you worry about Andy Reid's playoff record? I mean, he's gone to 5 NFC championship games, but in Kansas City they've had a really tough time winning playoff games. Do you worry about him in the postseason?
I don't think so. I think Andy Reid, what he does is, and what he's done for the National Football period has been amazing. I think it's just his time. I think it has to be his due time to actually go in there and to break whatever monkey's on his back or whatever curse he has on him, to really go out there and be successful and get to the Super Bowl. I think this is Andy Reid's year to actually do that. I hope it's his year to do that. He's suffered enough, not only in his personal life, but it's obviously in the professional, and not be able to get to the playoffs and get to the Super Bowl. I think this is his year to really get everything gelling and get everything moved together, because these guys played with heart, with stamina, with poise all the way through the offenses, even after losing Kareem Hunt.
It's crazy because the Chiefs could be the 1 seed with a win. With a loss, they could drop all the way to the wild card. Do you think the Chiefs need to have home field advantage at Arrowhead to make a Super Bowl run?
They need to. I think they need to start off with an electric atmosphere. It needs to be in an environment like Kansas City, like Arrowhead. That city's going to be rocking. I think they need to see how it is. A lot of these guys are young players. A lot of these guys who are rookies who are now playing a lot. Like Tyreek Hill, he's never been in an atmosphere like Arrowhead Stadium in the playoffs. So I think these kids need to see that, need to be in that environment so they know how serious the Super Bowl is going to be, because it's going to be a different scenario time and time again when you don't have home field advantage. You need to take, Arrowhead with you, and that's what they need to see. They need to start off with this electric atmosphere that it's going to be.
What do you think about the loss of Kareem Hunt? You were very open on these airwaves a couple of weeks ago about the problem, about domestic violence, which was really enlightening. But just in terms of a football standpoint, do you think the Chiefs lost something when they lost Kareem Hunt for the year?
I felt they lost a little bit of themselves. They lost their identity. They, obviously when the train is moving 100 miles per hour and these incidents happen, it really slows you down. It really is like, okay, now we're paranoid. Like, who's going to fill in? You worry about these things as a teammate. All right, who's going to fill in? Is he going to have the same production as Kareem? These are the things that go into offenses. Now you change your offense just a little bit to highlight some of the players that's going to be filling in that spot, and that's how guys kind of like, aren't easy or really don't trust certain situations, because, once you've been with a guy and this guy's going to be there day in and day out, and you lose him, then you kind of like you falter a little bit, like, all right, who's going to step up? Who's going to take his place? As a teammate, you worry about things like that. So I think they have to start learning now. This is the end of it. This is the end of the road. You have to start playing together and cut all this other mess or worrying about that stuff you can't change and just go forward.
Going back to that playoff game against the Colts where they tried to feed you the rock after a 400-carry season, you were the entire offense. That was a year where it was Trent Green and Damon Heward, and they really couldn't get any passing game going on. And you said the coaches just kind of leaned on you too much, and we kind of all saw that watching that season unfold. That was a Herm Edwards coach team. Was that a Herm problem? Was that a mistake by him?
No, it wasn't a mistake by him. I love the fact that Herm wanted to give me the football, but I think we had a brand new offensive coordinator who was an offensive line coach, Mike Solari, was a great coach offensive line wise, but when he got to being the offensive coordinator, I loved him because he would call those counter plays, those misdirection plays, those inside zone plays. I love those plays to death, but we were doing it so much, guys were putting 8 and 9 men in the box. And we didn't have that time. We had Eddie Kennison, Dante Hall was leaving, I think, at that time. We had no other threats on the outside besides me, Tony G on the inside. We were very, very constricted. We didn't have any openness to the offense. So guys would slide 8 and 9 men down in the box, and we didn't worry about if you could beat us deep because we rarely beat guys deep that whole season. So I think that's when, we struggled when we got to the playoffs because guys knew that all you had to do was drop men in the box, and at that time, Bob Sanders was an amazing hitter. So Bob would come down, be an extra linebacker. So I'm always facing 8, 9 men in the box every time, and we just couldn't change what we were as an offense.
Yeah, and that year the Colts actually ended up going and winning the Super Bowl 2006. Larry Johnson joins us this morning here on the show. You also played in Washington, and once again, they're out of the playoffs, and once again, Dan Snyder making moves, although not on the football side of things. He just cleaned house on the business department, fired a bunch of people on the business side of things. Everybody always says there's something dysfunctional about the Washington organization. Having played there, do you feel the same way?
The one of the things that's dysfunctional about that organization is the money itself. Dan Snyder doesn't know anything about football. He knows whatever he did to make his billions or whatever he made his millions is in a computer age or something like that. He don't know what he's doing. You can clean house 100 more times, but the problem is at the top. And the guys that need to stop waking up and stop blaming offensive guys, scout guys who put towels in the washer and dryer. They would fire everybody, but the main problem, if you do not have a already athletic or football mind, you don't know what you're looking for. You just spending money and putting pieces and pieces and hoping things fit. It doesn't work that way in the National Football League. You have to get guys that are trust the management, trust the ownership, and you got to be able to get guys together. I mean, you coming from when I came in, they had Albert Haynesworth. They got paid $92 million, and he didn't do nothing. I mean, this is what they think. They think buying players and buying contracts is going to get their way to the Super Bowl and the championship. This is not the business world. This is you're dealing with blood and flesh. And when guys don't understand that, their organization will continuously go down the toilet.
So you think the problem is Dan Snyder. He thinks he knows more about football than he does.
He thinks because he's ran a business that's probably been handed down or whatever he did to make that business, he thinks he knows about running players. He thinks he knows about the ins and outs of football. Football is not a business to some. See, this is what they don't understand. Football is not a business when it comes to coaches and players. No matter how many times you brainwash it, guys have been playing football in the streets in ratty jeans and clothes for nothing. Guys get to the league, yeah, you give them money, but you do not. That does not remove their heart of how much they love this sport. When you try to make it a business, that is where you tear down the passion of it. And when guys don't understand that, they will continue to be bringing players, overplay players who don't deserve it because they think this is what's good for business.
You played in Kansas City, you played in Cincinnati, you played in Washington and Miami. Was Washington the most dysfunctional organization?
Yeah, they were. Because, I mean, obviously had, a lot of good facilities, good things that's going on. But when it came to it, I mean, they hired guys that they paid, and then they made guys GM, coaches. Then they had a GM, Bill Kelly, at the same time. So I didn't know who. At the time, it was so dysfunctional. I had Shanahan telling me I was getting released when it should have came from, and then Bill Kelly was shocked that I was being released. So I was like, all right, so who ain't talking to who? So then it was like, oh, we'll bring you back, and, it's just a special teams thing. And then I just never got brought back, and then I just gave up that year and then signed on to Miami for a couple of games, and that was it. But, yeah, it was dysfunctional.
How could you win like that when you don't know who's supposed to know what and who's supposed to give you the news? That sounds like an impossible place to win.
It is an impossible place to win, and plus it's an impossible place to win when you have impossible egos. Everybody has an ego in there. You have a head coach. You bring the head coach's son in. That's the ego in itself. That's another group on itself. Then you have an outsider who's been there for the whole time. He don't know anything about certain guys or certain coaches and all that. So he's in his own environment. And it was too cliquish. When you don't have everybody that's together, everybody's going to be out for themselves to say, because they know, all right, if we're already on a rocky ship, I'm going to do what I can do to save myself from this ship from rocking, even if it does sink. I'm going to save myself. So you see what happens. Shanahan got fired. His son ends up being in Atlanta, and then now it's in San Francisco. And that's how you start tearing pieces down from organizations to where they can't recover because you fail to see that it's not a business aspect of it. It's a professional passion aspect of the football industry.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you feel like a lot of your teammates felt the same way? Like, oh, brother, Dan Snyder doesn't know what he's doing.
We came in there and was like, all right, bro. We came to how guys when games were getting hard at week 5, guys that have already given up. I got a release. Willie Parker didn't make it. Clinton Portis got hurt, and then Ryan Terrain. You know how Shanahan loves these no-name running backs out of anywhere, and then Terrain came in there. But it was like it was a ragtag team. It was like the Bad News Bears meets the Little Giants. It was just too much going on. It was too much going on for no one to know anything, and it was like. I feel like I practiced my butt off for that organization, and for the things not to turn out the way I wanted them to turn out, I could see it was just that whole season, that time, and that whole organization was going to go down right with it.
Larry Johnson joining us here on the show. Ran for 2,000 yards at Penn State. He was a first-round draft pick of the Kansas City Chiefs, a Pro Bowler and an All-Pro, Doak Walker Award winner, Walter Camp Award winner as well, joining us here on the show. Larry, it's really good to catch up after all these years, my man. Thanks so much for doing it. I'm sure we will chat again. As always, I appreciate your candor, your sincerity, your opinions, man. It was great. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Larry Johnson joining us this morning here on the show.